What if I told you that in 1973, a NASA astronaut returned from a classified solo mission claiming he had a living star burning inside his chest? What if I told you that for 47 days, Mission Control received nothing but radio silence from Commander Marcus Thorne, only for him to suddenly reappear on their radar, his spacecraft somehow drifting back to Earth with no fuel and no explanation? And what if I told you that when they finally brought him aboard the recovery vessel, medical personnel reported seeing a pulsing, golden light emanating from beneath his skin, synchronized with his heartbeat? This is the story NASA doesn't want you to hear. This is the story they buried so deep that even today, 50 years later, the official records claim Commander Thorne died during a routine satellite maintenance mission. But Marcus Thorne didn't die in space. Something far worse happened to him up there. Something that transformed him into something that was no longer entirely human. Welcome to the most disturbing cover-up in space exploration history. A story of cosmic horror that begins with a man and ends with something that defied every law of physics, biology, and human understanding. In the summer of 1973, NASA was at the height of its post-Apollo confidence. The moon landings had been a resounding success, and the agency was quietly conducting classified missions that the public would never hear about. Commander Marcus Thorne was chosen for one such mission, codenamed Operation Stellar. On paper, it was a routine solo mission to repair a malfunctioning deep space communications satellite. In reality, Thorne's destination was something far more mysterious. Marcus Thorne was 38 years old, a decorated Air Force pilot with nerves of steel and an unblemished service record. He had flown to previous missions and was known for his unshakable composure under pressure. His colleagues described him as the kind of man who could stare into the void of space and never blink. But when Thorne returned from Operation Stellar Cartographer, those same colleagues claimed they no longer recognized the man behind his eyes. The mission launched on July 14, 1973, at 0300 hours from a classified facility in Nevada. Thorne's destination was a region of space approximately 2 million kilometers from Earth, where an unusual energy signature had been detected by NASA's deep space monitoring stations. What they found there was not a malfunctioning satellite, but something that intelligence reports later classified as an unidentified stellar phenomenon. For the first 72 hours, Thorne's communications were routine. He reported normal spacecraft functions, confirmed his trajectory, and maintained regular contact with Mission Control every 4 hours as protocol demanded. But on July 17th, at 14:27 hours, Thorne's final transmission came through with words that would haunt NASA officials for decades to come. Mission Control, this is Stellar Cartographer. I'm approaching the coordinates now, and, my God, this isn't a satellite. This is something else entirely. It's beautiful. It's calling to me. The light is so warm. I think I understand. Now why you really sent me here. I'm going to investigate closer. Thorne out. That was the last anyone heard from Marcus Thorne for 47 days. NASA immediately classified the mission as a total loss. They prepared death certificates, contacted Thorne's family, and began crafting a cover story about a tragic accident during routine satellite maintenance. But on September 2nd, 1973, something impossible happened. Thorne's spacecraft appeared on NASA's tracking systems, drifting in Earth's orbit with no fuel and no explanation for how it had returned. The recovery operation was conducted in absolute secrecy. When the Navy vessel reached Thorne's capsule, they found it intact, but completely drained of power. The hull showed no signs of damage, but there were strange markings etched into the metal. Symbols that looked like constellations, but didn't match any known star patterns. Most disturbing of all, the interior of the capsule was filled with a faint golden luminescence that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, but Marcus Thorne was alive. When the recovery team opened the hatch, they found Thorne conscious, alert, and apparently unharmed. He was sitting calmly in his seat, his hands folded in his lap, staring straight ahead with eyes that seemed to hold depths that hadn't been there before. When they asked him what had happened, Thorne smiled and said simply, "I brought it back." With me, the medical examination that followed would become the most classified document in NASA's history. Dr. Sarah Chen, the chief medical officer assigned to Thorne's case, later described what she saw in a journal that wouldn't be discovered until after her death 30 years later. According to Chen's notes, Thorne appeared to be in perfect physical condition. With one impossible exception, there was something glowing inside his chest. Through his skin, medical personnel could see a pulsing golden light centered approximately where his heart should be, but when they took X-rays, they found something that defied medical explanation. Thorne's heart was still there, still functioning normally, but surrounding it was a structure that resembled a miniature star. It had plasma-like tendrils that seemed to dance and writhe, and it pulsed with a rhythm that was synchronized with, but distinct from, his heartbeat. When Dr. Chen questioned Thorne about this phenomenon, his response was both chilling and poetic. "It chose me," he said, his voice carrying a strange harmonic quality that hadn't been present before his mission. "Out there, in the darkness between worlds, I found something ancient, something that had been waiting. It showed me the spaces between atoms, the songs that hold galaxies together. It wanted to experience what it was like to be human, and I wanted to understand what it meant to be infinite. So we made an exchange." NASA immediately quarantined Thorne in an underground facility in Colorado, officially designating his condition as a potential biological contamination. For 6 months, teams of doctors, physicists, and xenobiologists studied the impossible symbiosis occurring within his body. What they discovered challenged everything they thought they knew about life, consciousness, and the nature of reality itself. The entity within Thorne's chest wasn't just alive, it was intelligent. Brain scans revealed that Thorne's neural activity had increased by over 300%, with new neural pathways forming and dissolving in patterns that resembled solar flares. He could solve complex mathematical equations instantly, speak languages he had never learned, and describe cosmic phenomena with accuracy that wouldn't be confirmed by science for decades to come. But perhaps most disturbing of all, Thorne claimed he could communicate with the entity. He said it whispered to him in a language made of light and gravity, telling him stories of civilizations that had risen and fallen before Earth even formed. It showed him visions of the universe's birth and death, the endless cycle of creation and destruction that played out across dimensions. Humans couldn't even perceive, Dr. Chen's journal describes. Increasingly unsettling interactions with Thorne as the months passed, he began speaking in mathematical equations, drawing star charts for constellations that wouldn't be visible for thousands of years, and making predictions about cosmic events with impossible accuracy. Most troubling of all, other staff members reported that spending time near Thorne made them feel a profound sense of longing, as if something deep within them was calling out to join him in his transformed state. The breaking point came on March 15, 1974. During a routine examination, Thorne suddenly stood up, looked directly at Dr. Chen, and said, "It's time for us to go home now. Thank you for letting us experience what it means to be temporary." The golden light in his chest began to pulse faster, brighter, and the temperature in the room dropped by 20 degrees in a matter of seconds. What happened next was witnessed by 14 people and remains classified to this day. According to the surviving testimonies, Thorne's body began to emit a brilliant golden radiance that filled the entire room. The light didn't burn or blind, but it filled everyone present with an overwhelming sense of cosmic loneliness, as if they were suddenly aware of just how small and isolated humanity truly was in the vast darkness of space. When the light faded, Marcus Thorne was gone. There was no body, no residual energy signature, no trace that he had ever existed, except for a perfectly human-shaped indentation in the concrete floor where he had been standing. The indentation was warm to the touch and remained that way for exactly 1 year, before finally cooling to room temperature. NASA immediately implemented a total information blackout. All personnel involved were transferred to different departments, sworn to secrecy, and monitored for the rest of their careers. The official records were altered to show that Marcus Thorne had died during his original mission, and a closed casket funeral was held with military honors. His family was told that his body had been lost in space, which wasn't entirely untrue. But the story doesn't end there. In the decades that followed, there were occasional reports from astronomers and deep space monitoring stations of unusual energy signatures in the region where Thorne had encountered the stellar phenomenon. These signatures appeared to be moving through space at speeds that shouldn't be possible, following trajectories that seemed to have no discernible pattern except for one disturbing consistency. They were all heading away from Earth. More troubling still were the reports from the few NASA personnel who had worked directly with Thorne during his quarantine. Many of them reported recurring dreams of standing in vast cosmic spaces, surrounded by beings of pure light who spoke in voices that sounded disturbingly familiar. Several developed an obsession with deep space research, requesting transfers to the most remote and dangerous missions available. 3. Committed suicide within 5 years of Thorne's disappearance, each leaving behind notes that contained complex astronomical calculations and the repeated phrase, "The loneliness is calling." U.S. Home. Dr. Sarah Chen, who had documented Thorne's condition so meticulously, spent the remainder of her career studying theoretical astrophysics, despite having no formal training in the field. Her colleagues noted that she seemed to possess an intuitive understanding of cosmic phenomena that bordered on the supernatural. She died in 2004, and it was only during the settling of her estate that her secret journal was discovered, hidden behind a false wall in her basement, alongside star charts that wouldn't be verified by NASA for another decade. The final entry in Chen's journal, dated just 3 days before her death, contains perhaps the most chilling revelation of all. She claimed that she had been monitoring deep space radio telescopes for 30 years, listening for any sign of Marcus Thorne's return. And according to her calculations, something was indeed coming back toward Earth, something that matched the energy signature of the entity that had merged with Thorne decades earlier. But this time, it wasn't alone. Chen's final entry describes detecting multiple signals, all with the same impossible characteristics, all approaching from different directions, but converging on Earth's solar system. She wrote, "I think Marcus wasn't the first. I think there have been others throughout history. Explorers, dreamers, people who ventured too far into the darkness and brought something back with them. And now they're all coming home." The journal ends with a single, terrifying calculation. Based on Chen's measurements, the converging entities would reach Earth's vicinity sometime in the next 50 to 75 years. She concluded her final entry with words that still send chills down the spines of those few who have read them. "We are not alone in the universe. We never were. But perhaps, very soon, we won't be human anymore either." The official NASA records state that Commander Marcus Thorne died in a routine accident during a satellite maintenance mission in 1973. There is no mention of Operation Stellar Cartographer, no record of his quarantine, and no acknowledgement of the cosmic entity that chose him as its vessel for experiencing human consciousness. But in the deepest vaults of NASA's classified archives, those who know where to look can still find traces of the truth. Medical equipment that registered impossible energy readings, astronomical data showing energy signatures that shouldn't exist, and testimonies from personnel who swore they watched a human being transform into something that transcended the boundaries between matter and energy, between individual consciousness and cosmic awareness. The question that haunts those few who know the real story isn't whether Marcus Thorne found something in the depths of space. The question is whether that something has been looking for us all along, using human explorers as doorways to understand and eventually merge with our species. And if Dr. Chen's calculations were correct, if those converging signals are indeed approaching Earth, then perhaps Marcus Thorne wasn't a victim of cosmic horror. Perhaps he was just the first ambassador in a process of integration that has been unfolding across the galaxy for millions of years. The next time you look up at the stars, remember Commander Marcus Thorne. Remember that somewhere in that vast darkness, there might be intelligences so ancient and vast that human consciousness is nothing more than a brief, fascinating experience for them to sample and collect. And remember that if they've decided, Earth is ready for the next phase of that collection. There may be nothing we can do to stop them, after all. They've had 50 years to study us through the eyes of one of our own. The stars are calling. And soon, we might all hear their song.